Hi Chris, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
All right. Today we are going to work on this lesson about the early humans. But before we start the lesson, I want you to read these 5 questions and put a check mark whether you agree or disagree with these statements. Read it out loud.
Anthropologists study how cultures develop.
Do you agree with this statement? Yes
I
or no?
believe so.
Then put a check mark here. Okay, what about the next one?
Early humans developed language, used art, and practiced religion. I believe that is false. Farming did not force humans to settle down. What does that mean?
That means when people started to grow their own food, but they start keep moving around.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Cell life led to the growth of village. I think so. No, actually, it was not. Settled life was a disaster for some nomads and did not lead to specialization. Sure.
Okay, so the reason of this anticipation activity is for you to have an idea of what are you going to read about in the lesson. And after we finish the lesson, you are going to read the same statements and see if your prior statements before your reading was correct. If you change your mind, then you can change your statement. If whatever you believe is correct here and is still correct after you read, then you will check the same places. Now, this will come later. In order for you to also be a good, to have a good understanding of what you're reading, taking notes is very important. So we are going to work on this graphic organizer where you are going to read the lesson, and as you read, you are going to make some notes in this area as well as on the back if need be. So we are going to look at 2 areas, and I'm going to give you specific areas to read only about early humans, and then we are going to read about the Neolithic age or the times. And at the middle of the lesson, there is a comparison between the Paleolithic as well as the Neolithic areas where humans lived in 2 different areas. These are very important, distinct areas in human history. So the first thing I need you to read is Tools of Discovery. Read this area.
Out loud.
Yes, please.
What we know about the earliest people comes from the things they left behind. Scientists have worked to uncover clues about early human life. Archaeologists hunt for evidence buried in ground where settlements might once have been. They dig up and study artifacts, weapons, tools, and other things made by humans. They also look for fossils, traces of plants or animals that have been preserved in rock. Anthropologists focus on human society. They study how humans developed and how they related to one another.
Okay. Now, if you want to write this down, Tools of Discovery. All right. Now, within this area, we talked about 2 very important characters, or humans. Who are those?
Archaeologists
And
anthropologists.
so write archaeologist, write anthropologist. Okay. Now, what do archaeologists do?
Hunt for evidence buried
Such
in the
as
ground.
what type of evidence?
Like artifacts.
Artifacts and
Fossils.
fossils. So put artifacts and fossils underneath. Very good. And what about anthropologists?
They focus on human society and how
So-
they developed.
Human society. Okay, now I'm going to draw your attention to this paper again. What did we say for the first one? Anthropologists study how cultures develop. You said agree. And what did you just read here? Anthropologists,
focus on human society.
which is
True.
true. So what you said here is correct. So put a check mark over there. Very nice. Now, we are going to move to the Neolithic times, and I'm going to ask you to read only about one section, and that section will be this area here.
Another advance in
Paleolithic
times was the development of spoken language. Language made it far easier for people to work together and to pass on knowledge.
Mhm.
Early people expressed themselves not only in words but in art. They crushed yellow, black, and red rocks to make powders for paint. Then they dabbed this on cave walls, creating scenes of lions, oxen, and panthers and other animals. Historians are not sure why these cave paintings were created. They may had religious meanings. Early people also might have thought that painting an animal would bring good luck in the hunt.
Okay. Did you finish?
Yeah.
All right. So, humans in the Paleolithic age, this is the old Stone Age period, did what? Develop language.
Yeah.
Why do you think they developed language?
To communicate.
To communicate. Any other thing? Communicating with each other leads to
Working together.
working together underneath. Working together. Okay. They also created some sort of an art form. And what was those art forms? What types of animals were in those art forms?
Lions, oxen, and panthers.
And where were these lions, oxen, and panthers painted?
Walls.
Mm,
Or caves.
museum walls? Or
Cave
cave
walls.
walls, okay. And they were painted in cave walls. All right, and finally, we talk about
Religion.
religion. What about religion? Historians are not sure why.
These cave paintings were created.
Hmm.
They thought they had a religious meaning.
Okay, so religion talks about primarily for imagine people who live in caves who do not have the sophisticated concepts that we have about religion itself. So for them, religion is animals as what?
Paintings. Or
So they painted the animals, but they painted the animals because they thought animals were
good luck.
good luck. Okay, write that down.
Early humans developed language, used art, and practiced religion. That is agreed.
Okay, very good. And now we are going to read this part of the world. Now, why was farming important?
Okay, so historians call the changes in the Neolithic age the farming revolution. The word revolution refers to changes that greatly affect many areas of life. Some historians consider the farming revolution the most important event in human history.
That is correct. Now, if you look at the map here, it shows that by 7000 to 2000 BC around the world, some areas of the world are learning to develop farming. So you can see how in North America and South America and Central America, especially what we call now Mexico, people are learning to cultivate or produce these type of fruits. In Asia, in Europe, people are learning how to cultivate all these type of stuff that are shown. In China it was rice, in Southeast Asia it was rice. So farming forced people from moving around into settling down and starting to have villages. So if we continue the reading that we have here, over here, the beginning of a settled life. Now read this, and we are going to write the answers to the other one.
The shift to settle life brought Neolithic people greater security than they had ever known. Steady food supplies meant healthy, growing populations. With a bigger population, there were more workers to produce a bigger crop. Because villagers produced more than enough to eat, they began to trade their extra food stuff. They traded with people in their own communities and with people who lived in other areas. People began to practice specialization.
What is that?
Or the development of different kind of jobs.
Okay.
Because not everyone was needed for farming. Some people had time to develop other types of skills. They made pottery from clay to store their grain and other foods. They used plant fibers to make mats and weave cloth. These craft people, like farmers, also took part in trade. They exchanged the things they made for goods they did not have.
Okay, so we learned that once humans learned how to farm, the farming revolution, as it was called, led to farming. Now, once you have a village of 100 people and 2 people can feed all 98, what the other 98 are supposed to do? Specialize in other things. So farming, the Neolithic age led to the farming, and farming led to the village, and in the village you have specialties. One of the specialties was, just right here, pottery. So people learn how to make pots, just like this one, where they started to store all their excess food. You also had weavers. These are people who made plant fibers and made weaves. And you also have craftspeople. People who started making jewelry and earrings and other stuff that people started to use in those days. So if we take a look at these two, Paleolithic and the Neolithic age, you see how the differences between them, what does it say here? Work of women and men. During the Paleolithic age,
women gathered food and cared for children, men hunted.
In the Neolithic age,
women cared for children and performed household tasks.
So they're not gathering food anymore, it is a job of one man. Men
herded, farmed, and protected the village.
Okay, so all these things led to the specialization of society in ancient times. And just read this last paragraph for me.
After 4000 BC, craftspeople in Western Asia mixed copper and tin to form bronze. Bronze was harder and longer lasting than copper. It became widely used between 3000 BC and 1000 BC, the period known as the Bronze Age.
Okay, so with the specialization, you have suddenly craftspeople who started to make discoveries of new metals mixing together. So the Bronze Age eventually is going to lead to the creation of a lot of the civilizations that we are going to see in lesson. Now, coming back to this last 3 things, read these 3 again and see if you agree with your prior statements.
Farming did not force humans to settle down.
You disagree with that?
I think that's true.
No.
That's false.
You should disagree with it.
Settled life led to the growth of villages. That's true.
You said no, now you say yes. That is good. What about this one?
Settled life was a disaster for some nomads and did not lead to specialization. I think that's false.
Disagree. So as you can see, reading and having an anticipation guide as part of your reading process is important because you had no idea what these things were before you read, prior to your reading. But after you read, either some of your ideas were correct or some of your ideas were incorrect, so you had to make a change on them. So for our part of our lesson, it's very important to keep in mind that reading before, prior reading, during reading, and after reading, taking notes such as this, and your note-taking packet helps you understand what you're reading. You don't need to memorize everything. That's why you need to take notes and how things are going to go. So, We are done with our lesson today. So we did our anticipation guide, we took our notes, and I'm hopeful that these two eventually are going to help you be a very good student in your reading process in your social studies and science. Any questions?
Nope.
All right, have a good day and thank you very much.
Thank you.